Good morning. Some people on the internet may be waiting on us, so we're going to jump right into gear here. This is our yearly past members memorial service for the Buddhist Women's Association of the Pasadena Buddhist Temple. Our chairperson today, Donna Mitoma, will give you a little more information about who we honor. And I'm going to begin the service by going out and ringing the calling bell, the Kansho, and we will then turn the mic over to Donna.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
My name is Donna Mitoma, and I'm happy to chair the service today. So today we're honoring Eshinni and Kakushinni, and also our Buddhist Women's Association members who have passed away this year. I'd like to do the opening meditation with some background about Eshinni, and then at the second half, the second meditation, I will do a short talk about Kakushinni. The contributions of both Eshinni and Kakushinni have had a lasting impact on Jodo Shinshu Buddhism. Eshinni gave Shinran Shonin her complete dedication and support, while Kakushinni established the foundation and center from which to transmit his teachings for many generations. Eshinni and Kakushinni represented women of the Kamakura era who were confident and self-aware and who actively participated in the history of Japan. Eshinni, who lived from 1182 to 1268, quite a beautifully long-lived life, was the daughter of a samurai of high rank in Echigo. She was described as refined and well-educated. Ashini was also a landowner This part surprised me. I didn't know that women could be landowners. This allowed her and Shinran Shonin to survive and raise a family while Shinran Shonin pursued his life's mission of spreading the Nembutsu teaching imparted by Honen Shonin. As we know, this teaching was to recite Namo Amida Butsu with deep faith or Shinjin, and thus to be embraced by the great wisdom and compassion of Amida Buddha. Shinran Shonin and Esshini were married in 1210 and lived in Echigo, where he had been exiled in the year 1207. They moved to the Kanto area sometime between 1212 and 1219, returning to Kyoto with some of their children around 1233. Esshini lived in Kyoto with Shinran for about 21 years. Then it became necessary for her to return to Echigo to take care of her property. At 73, Ashini returned to Echigo to take care of her property and left 82-year-old Shinran with their youngest daughter, Kakushinni. Ashini found the people of Echigo suffered from famine with many dying of starvation. She never was able to return to Kyoto as she struggled with terrible hardships helping her people in Echigo. And if you'll notice on the back of your program today, from Reverend Uno's quotation, last year's crop in our area was so bad, it was truly heartbreaking, and everyone's life was threatened. We were not the only ones who suffered a poor harvest. It was the same for farms in which we depend all the time for food. From the 11th month of the year before the last to the 5th month of last year, my illness was so severe that every day I expected to die at any moment, but somehow I'm still living. But I may die of starvation because of last year's famine. So things were really dire. So I will talk about Kakushinni later in the service. Let's see now. I think our next order of business is we're going to do Sutra chanting, Sanbutuge on page 33 of your service book.
Yes, thank you, Donna. And as she has told you, as Donna mentioned, we're going to begin the chanting of the Sanbutuge. I will announce it and we'll do it together. Busetsu Daimuryo Jukyo Sanbutsuge Kogen Gigi Ijin Mugoku Ryode Enmyo Muyo Tosha Ichigaten Mani Shuko Enyo Kaishten Nonpe Yunyaku Jumoku Nyorai Yogen Chosei Murin Shongaku Daion Koru Jipo Kaimon Shojin Amai Chie Itoku Muryo Shusho Keiu Jintai Zennen Shobuten Hokai Sujin Jinno Kugongai Tai Mumyo Yokunu Teson Yomu Minno Shishi Shintoku Muryo Kukun Kodai Shie Jinmyo Komyo Iso Shindo Daisen Anga Sabuten Taisho Ho Kado Shoji Nifuge Daten Puthe Joi Kainin Shojin Yose Sammai Chie Ijo Ose Tokubuten Fugyo Shigan Isai Kuku Isa Dayan 개시 우붓 약구센 노구만 무려 다이쇼 슈뇨 고랴 우요 이사이 시토 쇼붓 푸뇨 구도 켄쇼 후격구 인용 고랴 쇼붓 세카이 부후카게 무슈set노 오묘 시쇼 헨시쇼 코쿠 노데 쇼진 이진 난료 료가 사붓 코쿠도 다이치 고슈 키묘 도조 초set 코쿠뇨 나yon 니무토소 가토 아이민나 노닷 이사이 집볼아이쇼 신넷 쇼조 이토가 코쿠케라쿠 안논 코붓 신묘 제가 신쇼 오츠간노히 리키쇼 쇼요쿠 집보 세손 지혜 무게 조려 시손 지가 신교 계려 신시 쇼쿠 도쿠추 가교 쇼진나 민주케 나만나부 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 간일 시쿠도쿠 요도 세이사이 노원모나이 신나 오조 아라코쿠 나만나부르만나 나무 아미라 붓수 나만나 붓수 나무 아미라 붓수 나무 아미라 붓수
Next, we'll have incense offering, first from the Buddhist Women's Association. And the Pasadena Buddhist Temple. So we'll next do Gatha or sing, and on page 152 of your service book, Seiya, that will be followed by the recitation of the three treasures, which you will find on page 10 of your service book. Please stand.
stars. Who can ever veil its timeless mystery? Millions of lights sparkling bright in the sable sky touch my heart, my lonely heart, with serenity. More than all the countless sands Ganges river holds are the infinite Buddhas ever watchful over us throughout the day and night. Hearing this, my lonely heart fills with lasting peace. Thank you. Please remain standing for the three treasures, and this will be easier. The three treasures, how rare and wondrous it is to have been born into human life, and now I live it. How rare and wondrous it is to be able to listen to the Buddha Dharma, and now I am able to hear it. If I do not transcend the world of delusion in this life, when will I ever attain spiritual liberation? May I, along with the entire Sangha, with sincere heart and mind, rely on that which can be truly relied on in life, the three treasures. I rely on the Buddha. May I, along with all sentient beings, awaken to the great path with my entire being and discover the highest aspiration, which is to become a Buddha. I rely on the Dharma. May I, along with all sentient beings, deeply reflect on the meaning of the sutras and gain wisdom that is as deep and vast as the ocean. I rely on the Sangha. May I, along with all sentient beings, become one Sangha of life, able to move forward and live with a dynamic spirit that is hindered by nothing. The unsurpassed, deep, and wondrous Dharma, even in millions of kalpas, is extremely difficult to encounter. But now I am able to experience and embrace it. May I come to understand and revere the true meaning of the Tathagata. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. Thank you very much. Please be seated. So our speaker today needs no introduction. I'm going to do this myself. We don't have a guest minister this week. Thank you so much for attending. We are now on to the Dharma message portion of the service. I want to thank Alan Goto, our videographer and tech specialist, and also Kathy Kumagai for both playing organ and helping get this on the web for us. I want to thank Dharma Mitoma for being the chair. Jeannie Toshima for producing the program, and Kyoko Gibbs for producing the flowers as usual, and also doing the shogun, which is putting the utsushiki and the mizuki, these decorative cloths up on the altar. I always toy with you sometimes, like some of this language, like Maya-joku. You want to remember that's called Maya-joku, because that Maya-joku translates as front table. So it's the front table, that's all. And this process of putting up these cloths is called shogun, which means decorating. So yeah, some we can translate sometimes. It's not all mystical and beyond us all. But I thank Kyoko for putting the extra decorations up for us today and for doing the flowers. And we're absolutely dependent on Alan Goto for doing these services now. We hold this service for several reasons. We are here to honor the former members of the Pasadena Buddhist Temple's Buddhist Women's Association. We are here in part to mourn their loss, but also, as they say, to celebrate their lives. We are here also to remember and honor Eshinni and Kakushinni. We don't need to mourn their loss. They've been gone for over 800 years now, and it would be silly to pretend that we miss them. But we're sorry that they, like all humans, must confront death. We are here to have a Buddhist service that provides access to the deep truths about our lives to anyone who walked in the door or turned on their machine to watch us on and participate via the internet. We hold the memorial service for the past members of the Buddhist Women's Association every year. However, the last 2 years, the service was entirely cyber, with no live attendance. So that makes this year's service somewhat special. And it's not just that we're back, we're hybrid now. We're back here and out there at the same time. We're back for those who are able to attend. We're back here in the temple building for those who are able and set up to be here this morning. And we're on the internet for those who have mobility issues, who are out of town this week, or who live out of town. We have lost two former members of the Buddhist Women's Association this year, both of whom probably called it the Fujinkai. Firstly, Mrs. Yoshiko Takahashi, and more recently, Mrs. Akiko Tsukida. Some of you would have known her as Alice, Mrs. Alice Tsukida. We regret their loss, and we regret their families' losses of them. We're sorry that they're not still with us. Donna has told you a bit about Eshinni, and we'll tell you a little bit more about Kakushinni, and I will not give you too much more by way of biographical detail, but I do want to speak a bit about them. The two women were influential in establishing our school of Pure Land Mahayana Buddhism 800 years ago. I would like to comment a little on how they influenced our development. Mother and daughter, but each supporting the Dharma in slightly different ways. Eshinni, the wife of our denominational founder, Shinran, his wife was the source of both emotional and material support. As Donna mentioned, she was a landowner. In other words, it was a landowning family, and she was a senior person when her father died. You know, she apparently did not have a brother, and who knows, the government may have considered her son to be the landowner, but she was the one who ran things. And it was because they were not aristocrats, as Shinran's family used to be. They were a aristocratic family that fell into lower status. Dogen Zenji, founder of Soto Zen, was an aristocratic family that stayed aristocratic. Eshinni was like what we now call the upper middle class, but it was different back then. But they were landowners, so they had some means, and they kept Shinran alive. He would have died otherwise. He had no other means of support. Eshinni was, his wife was involved in the Nembutsu movement with his teacher Honen. And by all indications, she was a devout follower of the Nembutsu way. She was a very religious person, Eshinni. When the Nembutsu teaching was banned in Japan, due to pressure from other Buddhist groups, for about 6 or 7 years, Shinran was exiled to Eshinni's hometown in Echigo, present-day Niigata City. Shinran was exiled to Echigo not just because it was cold and difficult, not to punish him, because it was far from the capital. They're complaining about these guys, Honen and Shinran. Send Shinran as far northwest as you can, and Honen as far southeast as you can. Separate these guys, get them out of the capital. They're creating trouble. They're telling people they don't need to pay huge amounts of money to the established schools of Buddhism to keep their parents from suffering in hell. You don't. You don't have to give us any money. But anyway, there was pressure to stop this Nembutsu teaching, and Shinran was sent to Niigata because it was very far from the capital of Kyoto. And there he and Eshinni married. And it was, again, her family, their wealth, that kept him alive long enough to found our school of Buddhism. On the program, as Donna read, it mentions the passage from Esshini's letter when during a year of famine where everyone was dying, and I have no doubt that happened, but there were good years too. They wouldn't be there if there weren't. If you know, I'm trying to think this. Just second generation off the farm. Many of us started with farming families. And, you know, our family, this is a typical story. There's a lot of Japanese American families that have this story in Central California, that you have this big family and you have this farm and it's so hard and the work is so hard. And so 5 out of the 6 kids go off to the city and go into other professions. And the one kid that stays home on the farm starts out doing pretty well. Things change. I have one wealthy relative, my cousin. He's the one that stayed on the farm. His dad stayed on the farm. My dad, my aunties, they all left. So similar here. They had a bad year that year that we quoted, but Ashini's family were landowners, and that wealth was enough to keep our founder alive, Shinran. You also, on your program, have a brief account of the dream that Esshini had of her husband. It was a dream in which she was at a temple, and it was laid out like this, only it was, remember, this is a pre-Jodo Shinshu, so it would be like a Tendai temple where you would have a statue of the Amida Buddha and the statue of the Bodhisattva of compassion, and then the statue of the Bodhisattva of wisdom aspect of the Buddha, compassionate aspect of the Buddha. And in her dream, Esshini is looking here, and the compassion Bodhisattva to the right is like luminous, giving off light. And she turns to the person next to her and says, "Who is the Bodhisattva to the right of the Buddha?" And the person standing next to her says, "Oh, that's Shinran," and her husband. And then she woke up, like we always do. If you get a really good dream, it wakes you right up. So what's kind of, to me, kind of interesting about this, because I don't know the answer to this, why did she never tell Shinran about this? She told her daughter, but she never told Shinran. Now, Shinran had a vision of her as a bodhisattva, too. And you can believe he told her about that. Everybody knew about that. But this dream that Esshini had, that Shinran was a bodhisattva, was not revealed until after his death in letters to her daughter. Esshini, Shinran's wife, our denominational founder's wife, was both an emotional and financial support for Shinran. She was devoted because she envisioned him in that way as the embodiment of the compassion of the Buddha. Now, I'm not sure that the elevation of one's partner in these terms is a good general approach to marriage. But it's part of what a fledgling denomination of egalitarian Buddhism really needs: dedicated supporters, supporters who are reverent, unwavering, and sharing in the same vision. Esshini was that person for Shinran. His youngest daughter, Kakushinni, was also deeply devoted to her father, Shinran Shonin. She was at his side when he died. She was devoted to keeping his memory alive. We don't have any letters from Kakushinni, his daughter, and so we don't know if she was as deeply religious as her mother, as Esshini was. We really don't. But you know, all who are of service to the Dharma are not equally devout, reverent, and enthusiastic. You can be of a great support to the temple and to your own destiny without having those feelings, which are good feelings. But Kakushinni, what she did do was to communicate with Shinran's students in the farming area near Tokyo, the Kanto region. And she did arrange for the property of the memorial site for Shinran to belong to the membership. That's only slightly more than symbolic, you understand. What's more than symbolic is that they can't borrow money on it or sell it. So in that sense, it belongs to us. It belongs to all of us, all the followers of Jodo Shinshu Buddhism. And the one condition she made to donate the property that was originally just a memorial site for Shinran, then developed into our head temple, to the membership so that it would not belong to the family. They could not dispose of it or gain income from it. She just said, "I just want you to pick the caretaker from amongst my family." And that was agreed upon, Kakushinni, Shinran's youngest daughter, began the legal and political process of having his gravesite recognized as a temple. That took 150 years. She started it. Kakushinni also began the process of having the government acknowledge the head priest at that temple first as caretaker, Rusuban, That was after her death. They found, okay, he's the caretaker. They wouldn't even say that, the government. Then in later generations, it was up to Rusushiki, which is administrator. And then it was up to being the protector of Otani Ancestral Hall or the keeper of the gate, the Gomonshu. That took about 300 years. But she started this, and these details may not be so interesting to all of us, but it's part of the process that had to be done to make this an acknowledged school of Buddhism in Japan so that it could be transmitted to others. Memorable in all this is that his wife, Eshinni, saw our denominational founder, Shinran, as a living bodhisattva, an advanced, evolved being dedicated to the further pursuit of wisdom, kindness, and compassion. She and Eshinni's family supported Shinran in emotional regards and also in practical and financial senses. She was crucial to his ability to live and do his work. And we want you to remember that Shinran had this daughter, Kakushinni, who cared for him in his senior years, who was at his bedside when he passed away, who organized the Buddhist denomination. Donna and I have each told you some details about what she did. All these detailed actions Kakushinni took to establish her father's teaching as an acknowledged school of Buddhism were necessary. We wouldn't be here otherwise. Without her efforts, the Jodo Shinshu school of Pure Land Mahayana Buddhism would not exist. And it would not have been propagated outside of Japan. It would never have been taught to us. So these two women were both very important to us. We're here today, in part because of the efforts made by our denominational founder, Shinran, and the efforts made by his wife, Eshinni, and the efforts made by his youngest daughter, Kakushinni, and by the efforts of all the past members of the Pasadena Buddhist Temple's Women's Association. Buddhist Women's Association, including the late Mrs. Yoshiko Takahashi and the late Mrs. Akiko Tsukida, and including each of you. At the very least, everyone who walked in the door or turned on the TV has acknowledged that there might be something to all this. That's a way of taking refuge. That's a way of showing respect. Everyone's done that much. You walked in the door or you turned on your TV to our video service, and that is for you to say there might be something in all this. And if you thought there might be something to our school of Buddhism, that was the most preliminary, but the most important way to support us, by walking in the door, by turning on the TV, by participating. If you really think there's something to the Buddha's promise of liberation for all, come back next week. Stay with us week after week until that moment when you are enveloped in, liberated by, and transformed through the Buddha's light. That is my message for this morning, a Dharma message for the Buddhist Women's Association yearly service, and I thank you for your kind attention. I will close with Kansho as usual. We rely upon the source of limitless wisdom and endless life. Namo Amida Butsu, 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 Namo Amida Butsu.
Thank you, Sensei. I find these two ladies to be extraordinarily fascinating. And Sensei talked about Kakushinni, but I just want to close with a little bit more. Kakushinni was the youngest daughter of Eshinni and Shinran. At 9 or 10 years old, she moved to Kyoto with her parents. As an adolescent, she left home to serve as a lady-in-waiting in the household of Kuga Nichiteru, whose brother was Dogen. Dogen was the founder of Zen Buddhism. Kakushinni married Hino Hirotsuna, a relative and follower of Shinran Shonin, and she gave birth to a son, Kakue. Her husband died when their son, Kakue, was only 7 years old. Kakushinni took Kakue and went back to live with her parents. Until Kakue was about 9, he spent time with Shinran Shonin, learning the essence of Nembutsu. From 30 years old, Kakushinni took care of Shinran Shonin during his last years. He entered nirvana on January 16, 1263, at the age of 90. So Kakushinni took care of her father for 60 years. In those times, people believed that strange and miraculous events would occur when an important religious person died. Kakushinni wrote a letter to her mother, stating concern that her father's death was uneventful. Eshinni wrote back, "There is no doubt that your father was born into the Pure Land, and there is no need for me to reiterate this." Eshinni firmly believed that Shinran's birth in the Pure Land was assured because of his complete reliance on Amita's vow. Three years after Shinran Shonin died, Kakushinni married Onomiya Zenin, who owned valuable land in Kyoto. Kakushinni went beyond tradition and decided instead that the land that her husband had willed to her would be jointly owned by the disciples of Shinran Shonin. The Nembutsu teaching was a revolutionary doctrine at the time. The primal vow of Amida Buddha embraced all. No one was excluded on the basis of class, gender, education, or other biases. Very democratic. Kakushinni may have made her decisions based on this understanding of equality that Shinran Shonin taught. She also specified that the upkeep of the ancestral hall should be inherited by Shinran Shonin's descendants. Kakushinni assumed Kakushinni passed away at the age of 60. Her first son, Kakue, succeeded her in this kind of administrative duties. Today, the head of the Jodo Shinshu Honganji Ha is known as the Monshu or abbot. We know that, right? And his name is Otani, which continues the tradition of inheritance of the title of Monshu. Extraordinary women who were totally devoted to their calling. And we honor them today in this service. So, thank you very much. Next on our agenda is announcements. And if you have not offered incense before you came in, please feel free to do that before you leave the Hondo. Thank you very much for coming today. It's a glorious day, isn't it?
Lovely, thank you, Donna. Lovely day. I will refresh the incense here.
Hi, I'd like to invite those who are here today to remain after service and join us in the classrooms. Our BWA has prepared some light refreshments. Thank you very much to BWA and whichever Toban was in charge of refreshments today. And this coming Friday is the FBWA lecture that's open to the public, be available on Zoom, and I will try to come and show it on the TV, either in here or probably in the classroom, if anybody would like to join and view the lecture.
What time is that,
I
Kathy?
think it's 1. You'll be here?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No, if you're here, I'll be here.
Oh, okay.
I'm not attending, I'm just watching the lecture.
All right, I think it's up.
This should be a good talk by Dr. Paula Arai. We don't know, she's brand new. The Buddhist Women's Association gathered a bunch of money to get a professor who specialized in women's studies at our graduate school, but they never promised it would be a woman, right?
Right.
So fortunately, they found a woman who's Dr. Arai, who's specially trained in this area, Buddhist issues in women's and Buddhist history Buddhist women.
I believe,
So this should be a great talk. I'm looking forward to it.
I believe it's at 1 o'clock, but we will send out a notice for it. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Marvin Inoue, and I'm a volunteer at the Japanese American National Museum. Some of you might have noted in the LA Times about a week ago, they had an article regarding a book that's probably the size of the Gutenberg Bible that has every name of everyone that was ever incarcerated in the concentration camps in this country during World War II. And the book is supposed to be available for stamping at Janum for the next year, and then it will start traveling to some of the different pilgrimages that they have at, like, for example, Heart Mountain and Poston. I also want to put a plug in for that. In 2 weeks, the weekend of October 20th, 21st, the Poston pilgrimage will take place in Arizona. And Poston, if you didn't know, was the largest of the concentration camps. It held over 17,000 people, and there's Poston 1, 2, and 3, depending on when you went. But just to let you know, the Ireicho book that you stamp, you have to call to make a reservation to do it, and you can only stamp the book for 2 individuals. For example, I can do it for my parents on one side of the family, but someone else has to do it for my parents on my other side of the family. And it's designed so that future generations can also, your grandchildren, your children, your grandchildren, and great-grandchildren can also at some point stamp the book. And they have it available also. They have an amendment thing, because if the name was not printed in this thing that looks like, again, the Gutenberg Bible, they have an amended thing that's going to be eventually published. And just to give you an example of someone that's named that's not in the book, Gordon Hirabayashi, who is a Japanese Nisei that ended up having a court case go to the Supreme Court. He lost in the Supreme Court initially, and later his sentence was vacated. His name is not in the book because he never went to a concentration camp. He always went to a public jail. So his name is not in the book. So they're trying to, I think, come up with some kind of thing for certain individuals like that. There's a handful of people like that besides Hirabayashi, Korematsu, and Yasui. Okay? Thank you.
The service will be over soon, but we have a little more announcement time here. And don't forget, we are going to have some refreshments next door today. We have, I think, strawberry shortcake.
Morning, everyone. It's the fall, and we have some fundraisers coming up. Silent auction is one, and then so this week we'll be mailing out the announcement for bingo and our kamaboko sale. So we always sell kamaboko, and we are doing bingo again because we had so much fun in November. And we also have we're selling mochi helpings, the Venice Buddhist Temple with their mochi sale. So we're going to be taking orders here, and if you, San Fernando, did I say San Fernando? San Fernando Buddhist Church is doing the mochitsuki, and so in the past we've purchased from them, so you can order through Pasadena Buddhist Temple. We'll compile the orders, pick it up for you at San Fernando, and bring it back here so you can pick it up. So we have mochi, bingo, kamaboko, and sashimi sale, and the silent auction. So 4 things. So don't throw away the envelope if you get one. It's not just asking for money. It's going to have information in there, okay? Thank you.
Thank you. And with the bingo, we're also going to be preparing and selling beef yakisoba. So it's kind of a dinner, bingo, evening, and osaka tasting. So it's like a whole lot of things going on. But it'll be great fun, and we're very competitive, so bingo is always serious. Thanks so much for coming today. Bye-bye.